Today we're counting down 20 weird industries that are worth billions of dollars. From lab-grown jewels to cloud seeding services, these are the most unusual industries in the world. Number 20. Atmospheric water generators. So few industries do sound stranger than one built around pulling drinking water out of thin air. Well, that's exactly what atmospheric water generators do. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency says AWGs, or atmospheric water generators, produce potable water from surrounding air, which could help expand water availability during a shortage, a contamination event, or another disruption. Grand View Research estimated the global atmospheric water generator market at about $2.8 billion in 2025, with a projected rise to about $5.7 billion by 2033. Now, of course, as with all market research, the estimates differ from firm to firm, but the basic point is not in doubt. This is already a multi-billion-dollar business built around an idea that sounds almost like a trick. Most people imagine water as something that comes from pipes, wells, reservoirs, glaciers, or bottles. AWGs skip all that and just go after humidity in the air itself. The EPA's technical brief explains the process in plain terms. These systems produce potable water from the surrounding atmosphere. It includes larger systems aimed at serious water supply needs, especially in places dealing with groundwater decline, contamination, or even unreliable infrastructure. Instead of transporting water from elsewhere, the machine is sold as a way to generate it on-site. Grandview said Asia-Pacific held the largest regional revenue share in 2025, and it pointed to water scarcity and groundwater decline. These are practical reasons, so the industry exists because in some environments the old water model is under pressure. When that happens, a machine that quietly condenses, filters, and outputs drinkable water starts to look less like a novelty and more like a purposeful piece of infrastructure. A viewer sees a cabinet, a vented machine, or a large industrial unit, and the claim is that water is coming out of air that looked empty seconds earlier. Of course, the EPA's brief treats the technology as a serious water production option, and it evaluates its feasibility in emergency and shortage scenarios. But the basic image is still pretty cool. Unlike desalination pipelines or reservoirs, atmospheric water generation is compact and strange enough that it feels futuristic, even when it's just sitting in a warehouse or an office building. Number 19. Drone light shows. A drone light show is one of those businesses that still sounds made up the first time you hear it. The product is not a movie, it's not a concert or a fireworks show. It's a fleet of synchronized drones turning the night sky into a moving screen. And yet, this strange corner of entertainment is already big enough to count as a real billion-dollar industry. Grandview Research estimated the global drone light show market at about $1.7 billion in 2025. That's up roughly from $1.5 billion in 2024. Well, the estimates can vary by research firm, but even allowing for that, the category is clearly no longer tiny. It has become a real commercial field built around software, batteries, logistics, event production, and even airspace compliance. This one's unusual because it blends aviation with entertainment in a very literal way. A traditional fireworks show burns through its product in minutes. A drone show sends hundreds or even thousands of reusable aircraft into the air, each one acting like a pixel in a floating display. Shapes, logos, animals, faces, skyline outlines, holiday scenes, and even animated sequences can all be built in real time out of these little moving points of light. Now, every show depends on route planning, swarm control, communications, and redundancy, so Grandview's market summary also noted that drone formations were the largest segment type in 2024, which gives a good sense of what the business is actually selling, not just drones, but highly controlled mass formations in the sky. The FAA now treats test drone light shows as a distinct operational reality. Its Part 107 waiver framework allows drone operators to request approval for operations outside the standard limits, and an FAA waiver document issued in 2025 includes reporting requirements specifically for drone light show operations. Now, that may sound bureaucratic, but that's important. Once a regulator has paperwork specifically naming your activity, the activity usually has become large and common enough to need its own operating track. The FAA also said in February of 2026 that it had taken reinforcement action tied to multiple safety violations during a 24 light show in Orlando. Now, that doesn't mean the industry is reckless by nature. It just means the industry has grown enough that safety enforcement is now a real part of its operating environment. And even the weirdness of the industry becomes clear when you think about what customers are actually paying for. They're not buying the drones themselves, they're just buying a temporary sky event engineered out of software and aircraft. A city might commission one for a festival, a sports team might use one for a halftime show, a company might use one to turn its logo into a three-dimensional image above a waterfront. This business sits in a strange space between aviation contractor, special effects house, and live event company. And that's exactly why it works. It feels futuristic, but it's already commercial, regulated, and well worth over $1 billion. It's a business built around choreographed flying machines drawing temporary pictures in the sky. And it's moved far beyond the stage of being a one-off gimmick. Number 18. Lab-grown diamonds. A strange thing has happened to one of the oldest luxury products on Earth. Part of the diamond business no longer starts in the ground. It starts in machines. Research estimated the global synthetic diamond market at $12 billion in 2025, which immediately tells you this is not a tiny science experiment or a niche jewelry trend. It is a real industry with a serious scale. What makes it cool is that the core product is something most people still associate with deep mines, geologic pressure, and millions of years of formation. Instead, this business grows diamonds inside controlled environments and sells them to both industrial markets and jewelry markets. Reuters reported in October of 25 that lab-grown diamonds had become a major force in the broader diamond market, with S&P Global noting that they accounted for about 20% of the market by value and as much as half of the U.S. engagement ring market. That's a huge shift for a product category that once dominated by mined stones and tightly controlled supply chains. In other words, the industry is not just strange because diamonds are now being made in reactors, it's strange because the manufacturing model itself has become powerful enough to shake the economies of the natural diamond trade. Research also says the market is driven by industrial uses including cutting, drilling, grinding, polishing, and other applications where synthetic diamonds offer hardness and thermal conductivity. And the same manufactured stone can appear in a ring box, in a machining tool, or inside a high-tech process. It is both luxury object and engineered material. They are gleaming gemstones under retail lighting, but behind them are presses, growth chambers, polishing facilities, and production centers, turning one of the most mythologized materials in the world into a manufactured product. Number 17. On-orbit satellite servicing. Alright, so very few industries sound more unreal than one built around fixing, moving, docking with, or extending the life of satellites after they're already in space. This business is real and it's now measured in the billions. Fortune Business Insights estimated the global on-orbit service market at $2.8 billion in 2025. Because these are industry estimates, not government counts, the exact number varies, but the big picture is clear. Servicing for satellites is no longer a futuristic side concept, it's become a real commercial category. For most of the space age, spacecraft were launched, used, and then eventually abandoned. This industry is trying to turn orbit into a place where machines can be serviced, repositioned, or even upgraded. NASA's 2025 State of Play report makes clear how broad the idea has become. The agency describes in-space servicing, assembly, and manufacturing as a capability that's important for civil, national security, and commercial space sectors. The ESA has moved in the same direction. In October of 24, the European Space Agency said it would build its first in-orbit servicing mission with D-Orbit under the RISE program, which is intended to demonstrate safe rendezvous and docking with a geostationary satellite. Now that's what makes the industry so strange and compelling. It treats orbital hardware less like disposable equipment and more like infrastructure that can be maintained and worked on. There are already real examples. In 2025, Northrop Grumman announced the first ever undocking between two commercial spacecraft in geosynchronous orbit, when one of its mission extension vehicles separated from Intelsat 901 after years of life extension service. Reuters reported in March of 2025 that Astroscale, a company focused on debris removal and orbital servicing, had partnered with Indian startups to offer servicing technology in India within 1 or 2 years. And at the same time, this field is not a smooth, guaranteed success story. Reuters reported in 24 that NASA canceled its OSAM-1 satellite servicing project after higher costs, technical issues, delays, and lack of committed partners for servicing unprepared satellites. Well, this industry is real, and it's still figuring out which business models and technical approaches will actually scale. Number 16. Virtual influencers. One of the weirdest industries to explode in the past few years is built around people who don't exist. A research firm estimated the virtual influencer market at $6 billion in 2024 and said it was expected to reach $8.3 billion by 2025. That was an astonishing number for a business whose main product is a digital personality. These are computer-generated characters designed to look like influencers, models, creators, or entertainers. And brands will use them for campaigns, product placement, social content, and audience engagement. This industry sounds absurd at first because it turns a very human-looking job into a synthetic one, but the numbers do suggest it's already far beyond a novelty. In July of 25, H&M said it had begun releasing images featuring digital twins of human models as part of its exploration of generative AI in fashion imagery. The market is no longer limited to fully fictional online characters. It now includes digital doubles, synthetic models, and AI-generated brand faces that can appear in campaigns without travel, reshoots, or weather problems, or many of the logistical limits that come with real-world production. A company can effectively create a visual spokesperson who never gets tired, never ages, and can be deployed in endless combinations. And that is a very strange thing to become normal. At the same time, the industry is not just growing in a clean, straight line. Reuters Breakingviews wrote in August of 25 that AI influencers were attracting brand attention in part because they're cheaper and more controllable than human actors, but also noted that more than half of Gen Z consumers in one survey said they disliked AI-generated personalities. Time reported in December of 25 on Granny Spills, an AI-generated grandmother character that had gone viral on TikTok and Instagram, while also showing the skepticism and monetization challenges facing these synthetic creators. That tension is what makes this business so fascinating. The commercial logic is obvious. A brand-controlled digital personality can be multilingual, endlessly available, and free from many of the unpredictabilities of real celebrity culture. But audiences don't always respond to artificial perfection the way marketers hope. Still, though, the scale of the market shows that brands, agencies, and tech firms believe this category is here to stay. And that's again what makes it so weird. It monetizes attention using people who are not actually people, and it borrows the language of fame, trust, personality, and influence, and then just rebuilds it out of software rendering and brand management. For viewers, it makes it memorable. For companies, it's become a serious line of business. And for a list like this, it's one of the greatest examples of an industry that sounds ridiculous until you realize how much money is already flowing through it. Number 15. Underwater robotics. The ocean is so hostile to human work that an entire billion-dollar industry has grown around sending robots down there instead. Fortune Business Insights says the global underwater or marine robotics market was valued at $5.8 billion in 2025. Underwater robotics is already a large business. NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, describes underwater robots, such as remotely operated vehicles and autonomous underwater vehicles, as essential tools for ocean exploration. This industry is built around machines that are designed to operate in pressure, darkness, salt water, currents, and places where direct human presence is expensive, risky, or impossible. The core categories are already strange enough to feel really cool. NOAA explains that ROVs are tethered to a ship and controlled by pilots on the surface, while AUVs are untethered and they run pre-planned missions using onboard systems. Now, in practical terms, that means the industry includes everything from cable connection deep-sea workhorses with cameras and manipulator arms to sleek autonomous machines mapping the seafloor or gathering sensor data. Saab says its CI unit is the largest manufacturer of electronic underwater robotic systems for professional applications and says it's delivered more than 900 ROVs worldwide. NOAA uses underwater robots for exploration and habitat observation, and Reuters reported in late 24 on AI-powered underwater robots being developed in the UK to inspect and repair offshore wind farms in rough seas. In October of 25, Reuters also reported that Italy's Fincantieri had launched an underwater drone designed for both military and civil uses, including protecting and maintaining underwater infrastructure. And in November of 2025, Reuters reported again that European governments had agreed to buy underwater drones for military use as concern over undersea infrastructure grew. That's really what turns the category from odd tech into real industry. These machines are not just exploring shipwrecks, they're being sent after cables, turbines, pipelines, and surveillance tasks. Number 14. Astrology apps. So one of the strangest large digital businesses in the world is built around putting horoscopes, birth charts, compatibility readings, and personalized cosmic advice into your smartphone. It's not just a handful of novelty apps surviving on curiosity either, it's a real market. Markintel advisors estimate that the global astrology app market is $3 billion in 2024, while a 2026 industry report summarized by Research and Markets said that the market had reached $4.7 billion by 2025. These are estimates, and like many digital market estimates, they do differ depending on the methodology, but both make the same point. Astrology apps have become a multi-billion-dollar business. That's a strange outcome for a category built around zodiac signs and planetary positions. CoStar, one of the best-known apps in the category, describes itself as an astrology app that uses birth time, date, and location to generate a highly personalized reading. The pattern presents itself as a tool for understanding personality and relationships more deeply. These are not marketed like joke apps, they're designed like serious products with notifications, account systems, subscriptions of course, social features, and a visual language borrowed from wellness and self-discovery. The oddity here is not just that astrology exists online, it's that astrology has been translated into the interface logic of modern app businesses. The Associated Press reported in 2025 on a Pew survey showing that about 3 in 10 Americans engage in astrology, tarot cards, and fortune-telling at least once a year, usually for amusement, but sometimes because they believe it offers useful insight. That same AP report said the broader psychic service industry generated $2.3 billion in revenue and employed about 105,000 people. That doesn't mean all that money belongs to apps, but it does show the wider commercial environment these products do operate in. Astrology apps succeed because they sit at a weird intersection of old beliefs, digital convenience, subscription economics, and a massive appetite for personalized content. They can deliver a daily message, a compatibility score, or even a cosmic warning in the same device people are already using for banking, dating, shopping, and work. Number 13. Pet wearables. A strange thing is happening in the pet business. Collars are no longer just collars. They can now function like a miniature connected device that tracks location, activity, sleep, health patterns, and, in some cases, behavior. Research firms estimate that the global pet wearable market is at $3.3 billion in 2025, while Fortune published a slightly higher 2025 estimate of $4.1 billion. That does make it one of the stranger consumer tech businesses because the product is basically a smartwatch economy that's built for animals. Grandview says the category includes GPS, RFID sensors, smart cameras, smart collars, smart harnesses, and systems that are used for tracking, behavior monitoring, safety, and medical diagnosis. In other words, it's not just about finding a dog that jumped a fence. It's about turning pets into data-generating users of connected hardware. That is a strange shift when you stop and think about it. The animal itself hasn't changed, but the business around it has. A dog can now generate location histories, activity metrics, sleep trends, and health alerts in a way that would have sounded excessive not very long ago. The products themselves are already showing where this is going. Tractive markets GPS trackers that offer real-time location, virtual fences, activity monitoring, sleep tracking, barking-related alerts, and health insights. Fi is another major player. They launched the Fi Mini in 2025, and The Verge reported that it was designed for cats and small dogs while offering escape alerts, live tracking, and app integration. It sells a relationship between owners and animals, one where pets are monitored with tools that look a lot more like consumer electronics than traditional pet gear, and the result is a category that feels half veterinary and half telecom and half lifestyle technology. Grandview says the industry is being driven by the humanization of pets, meaning owners are increasingly treating pets more like family members than a property. Now, that might sound like marketing language, but it does match what the products are actually doing. Once an owner starts thinking of a pet as a family member whose safety, health, exercise, and routines should be monitored closely, a smart collar starts looking less like a luxury and more like an obvious purchase. That logic is especially strong in North America, where Grandview expects the regional market to exceed $2.3 billion by 2030. This basically turns a pet into a user without the pet ever knowing it's in the system, and because the devices are small, everyday, and easy to overlook, the weirdness of the industry is almost hidden inside the normality of the objects themselves. A little collar tag or sleek tracker doesn't look like a billion-dollar product category, but that's exactly what it's become. Number 12. Indoor ski areas. Very few industries feel more unnatural than building winter inside a sealed structure and selling it all year long. But that's exactly what the indoor ski business does, and by current market estimates, it's already worth billions. WiseGuy Reports estimated the indoor ski area market at about $3.4 billion in 2025, while Mordor Intelligence estimated the broader skiing facilities market at about $3.9 billion in 2025. Those are research firm estimates rather than official counts, and they define the market slightly differently, but they point in the same direction. Skiing is no longer only a mountain industry, it's an indoor real estate and entertainment business. That shift is easiest to understand when you look at the actual facilities themselves. Ski Dubai, inside the Mall of the Emirates, offers skiing, snowboarding, penguin encounters, a chairlift, and snow activities inside a mall in the desert. A case study on the resort says the structure covers over 22,000 square meters. It contains 5 runs and can host up to 1,500 people at a time. The AP reported in 25 that the larger mall drew more than 40 million people in 2024, and that Majid Al Futtaim was planning a $1.3 billion renovation of the overall complex. That is an extraordinary picture. An indoor snow slope in one of the hottest major cities on Earth is not just an engineering gimmick, it's part of a huge commercial destination. Reuters reported in August of 25 that thousands of people were flocking to the Shanghai El Snow indoor skiing theme resort during a heat wave, with the facility spanning 98,000 square meters and maintaining temperatures of below 5 degrees Celsius all year round. Outside, the city's baking. Inside, the people are throwing snowballs and skiing. It's climate-controlled winter sold as an urban attraction. There is also evidence that indoor snow is turning into a structured international sector rather than a few isolated novelties. Snow World, one of the best-known European operators, says it runs multiple indoor snow destinations and markets them as year-round ski resorts. A 2025 industry report on the Snow World Snow Centers merger described the combined group as Europe's indoor snow leader with 12 sites in 5 countries, more than 4.5 million annual visitors, and more than £100 million in revenue. That sort of scale's impressive. It's developing operators, networks, memberships, and repeat visit habits the same way other leisure categories do. This business takes a seasonal alpine activity that should depend on mountains and weather and then turns it into a permanent urban project. Snow becomes infrastructure and winter becomes a service. It's hard to think of a better example of an industry that looks bizarre on first contact and completely normal once the money gets large enough. Number 11. 3D bioprinting. Some industries are weird because they feel theatrical. This one's weird because it feels like medicine is jumping ahead of the present. 3D bioprinting is the business of printing structures made with living cells and biomaterials for research and drug testing. Research estimated the global 3D bioprinting market at $2.3 billion in 2023 and projected it to reach $5.3 billion by 2030. This means the category's already crossed into a real industrial scale. This is a market that's big enough to be measured in billions, and that alone makes it one of the strangest on this list. The reason the category feels unusual is simple. It takes the logic of additive manufacturing and applies it to biology. The NIH National Center for Advanced Translational Sciences says its 3D tissue bioprinting program uses bioprinting to create models that mimic human tissues in order to speed drug discovery and development. It means the industry is not only about plastic prototypes or metal parts, it's also about building living or semi-living tissue structures layer by layer for scientific and medical use. The NIH also says the program is aimed at creating assay models that better predict the effects of drugs in humans, which does show how practical the business has become. The FDA says 3D printing is already used for a variety of medical devices, including orthopedic implants, cranial implants, and surgical instruments. Bioprinting is pushing that general technology into even stranger territory, where the printed object is no longer a device, but a tissue-like structure. Reuters reported in July of 25 that researchers had produced a 3D printed insulin-producing pancreatic islet cell using bioink made from human pancreatic tissue and alginate, with promising lab results for type 1 diabetes. Reuters also reported in January of 26 that Novo Nordisk expanded its partnership with Aspect Biosystems, a company using 3D bioprinting technology to develop cell-based therapies for diabetes. It might just be a tiny printed tissue scaffold, or a lab-grown implant, a printed cell structure, or a research model designed to behave more like the human body than older test systems. But it is something that's being printed, and what's being printed is no longer just inert material. It's a biological construct with medical value, and that gives the whole category an almost uncanny quality. Printing fully functional organs for routine transplantation remains far beyond what is standard right now, but that doesn't make the industry any less real. It makes it more interesting. The money's already there, the research infrastructure is already there, and the use cases in drug development, tissue modeling, and advanced implants are already there. 3D bioprinting is one of the few billion-dollar industries built around an idea that still sounds impossible when it's stated plainly: printing biology. Number 10. Pet cloning. One of the strangest industries in the modern world is built around a simple, yet unsettling promise. Your pet can, in some cases, be cloned. Research and Markets said in 2025 industry report that the pet cloning market would grow from $4.3 billion in 2025 to $4.9 billion in 2026. Even allowing for any uncertainty, the basic point is clear. Pet cloning has become large enough for researchers to treat it like a serious market. That is an astonishing place for a business to arrive. The operational side of the industry is even stranger than the number. Viagen, the best-known company in the U.S. pet cloning space, says dog and cat cloning costs $50,000, while horse cloning costs $85,000. Well, the American Animal Hospital Association wrote in 25 that Viagen was the only pet cloning company in the U.S. and that there was a 5 to 7 month wait list. There is a real sales process too, a price list, a real client queue, and a real service structure around it. A person can preserve tissue from a beloved animal and pay to create a genetic twin born later. Just reading that sentence, it still sounds almost unreal, but it's not made up. The Atlantic reported in 2025 from Viagen's headquarters in Texas, and it described it as the world's leading producer of cloned cats, dogs, and horses. Later that year, People and other outlets reported that Tom Brady's dog Junie was a clone of his late dog Lua, with this cloning carried out through Viagen in connection with Colossal Biosciences. Colossal announced that it acquired Viagen to expand its capabilities in cloning, cryopreservation, assisted reproduction, and species preservation. It's bizarre enough to generate disbelief, but real enough to attract wealthy clients and biotech acquisitions. Now, it is important to be honest about what cloning does and does not mean. Viagen says a cloned puppy or kitten is a genetic twin born later and should share many of the original's attributes, including appearance and some behavioral tendencies. But cloning doesn't literally recreate a former life or a past relationship. Environment still matters, timing still matters, training, experience, they all still matter. And it's that gap between biological sameness and emotional difference. It's one reason the industry is ethically controversial. Some people see it as an extraordinary act of love and biotechnology. Others see it as a very expensive and unsettling response to grief. Whether people admire it or hate it, the industry's real, growing, and it's far larger than most people would ever guess. Number 9. Scent marking. Some industries sell products you can hold in your hands. This one smells in the air. Scent marking is the business of pumping carefully designed fragrances into stores, hotels, casinos, offices, gyms, and other spaces to shape how people feel inside them. One industry estimate puts the global scent marketing market at about $4 billion in 2026, while verified market research projects it to reach $5.6 billion by 2032. These are commercial research estimates, not official census figures, but the important part is not the decimal point. It's the fact that the smell itself has become a multi-billion-dollar marketing category. Now, what makes this one strange is how invisible it is. A shopper will walk into a hotel lobby, a casino, or maybe a clothing store and notice that the place feels a certain way without immediately realizing why. And that's where the industry lives. Scent Air says it works with hotels and resorts to create welcoming environments and emotional connections that will improve your guest satisfaction. Air Aroma is another major player. It describes itself as a scent marketing agency designing custom fragrances and diffusion systems for luxury brands, hotels, and retail stores. This idea is not brand new, but it has become much more systematized. Reuters wrote as far back as 2011 that scent marketing was expanding as the technology became more sophisticated and affordable, allowing retailers to scent spaces for less than $100 a month in some cases. Since then, the category's only become more professionalized. Instead of crude air fresheners, businesses now buy programmable diffusion systems, signature scents, and zone-specific fragrance plans. It takes something people usually treat as just a background sensation and turns it into a measurable business input like lighting, music, or even signage. The machinery itself often hides inside the ceilings, walls, HVAC systems, or even discrete devices. The real sale's not the diffuser, though. It is the atmosphere. A hotel wants a recognizable arrival scent. A casino wants a floor that feels less stale and more immersive. And a luxury retailer wants a fragrance that becomes part of the memory of the store. That's how smell gets converted into money. What sounds like a sensory trick becomes a formal line item in your hospitality, gaming, and retail design. And once the idea clicks, the whole business becomes hard to forget. Somewhere above a store entrance or behind a hotel vent, a hidden machine may be helping drive one of the strangest large industries in the world. Number 8. Yacht transport ships. One strange billion-dollar industry in global logistics is built around transporting luxury boats that are already designed to travel across oceans. Now, at first that sounds pretty absurd. A yacht itself is a vessel often equipped for long-distance travel, yet thousands of them are regularly loaded onto much larger ships and carried across the world. This industry exists because moving a yacht under its own power can be much slower, riskier, or more expensive in crew costs and more damaging to the vessel than just loading it onto a specialized carrier. That simple economic logic created a strange but highly profitable sector. The best-known company in the field is Dockwise Yacht Transport, which operates large semi-submersible ships that are designed to specifically carry yachts. The loading process is pretty cool. The transport vessel partially submerges, and the yachts are floated into position above the deck. Divers secure them, and then the ship rises again, lifting dozens of luxury vessels out of the water all at once. A single sailing can carry dozens of vessels, with routes linking places like the Caribbean, Mediterranean, and the U.S. East Coast. Wealthy yacht owners often want their vessels in the Mediterranean for summer and in the Caribbean for winter. Crossing the Atlantic under its own power means crew wages, fuel, the wear on the engines, exposure to storms, and weeks of risk. Shipping the vessel on a transport carrier protects the yacht's value better than sailing it there. The industry serves racing yachts and charter fleets too. Boats moving between major racing circuits often need exact timing, and transport carriers make scheduling more predictable. Insurance does also play a role too. Marine insurers sometimes view carrier transport as a lower risk than independent crossings, and that adds another commercial layer to a business that already sounds unusual. Entire rows of yachts sit strapped to giant floating decks like parked cars, except the cargo itself is made of polished hulls, radar arches, and teak decks. And the contrast is why the yacht transport belongs here. It takes luxury objects designed for movement and turns them into freight. Few industries look more surreal while remaining completely practical. Number 7. Mycelium materials. A billion-dollar industry now exists around the root-like network of fungi. Not mushrooms in the usual sense, but mycelium, a thread-like structure that grows through organic matter and can be shaped into packaging, insulation, leather-like sheets, food products, and even construction materials. Fortune Business Insights estimated that the global mycelium market is $3.1 billion in 2025. Mycelium is no longer just a biological curiosity, it is a real industrial category. Agricultural waste or other organic feedstock is combined with mycelium, and the fungus grows through the material, binding it into a usable form. Evocative, one of the best-known companies in the field, says it pioneered mycelium manufacturing and launched products including mushroom packaging and mycelium insulation. Its packaging business describes mycelium-based protective packaging as an alternative to polystyrene and plastics, made from hemp hurd and mycelium and designed to compost quickly. That means one of the industry's core tricks is taking something that sounds like decay and turning it into a structure. Instead of steel rollers or injection molds that dominate the store, you get these trays of growing material, pale, fibrous forms filling molds, wall panels made from fungi, and packaging that looks grown rather than manufactured. The AP reported in late 2025 on a Kenyan company using mycelium combined with natural fibers and agricultural waste to make building panels for insulation, interior decor, and structural purposes. That article described the material as biodegradable and tied it to efforts to lower construction costs and emissions. This biological material will show up in packaging, building products, fashion-adjacent materials, and foods. Now that last category matters. The mycelium business is not just about materials replacing plastic or foam. Fortune Business Insights says the growth of the market is also tied to rising interest in natural flavors and green solutions. It's entering several different industries at once, including packaging, building materials, food, and potentially textiles. But the whole industry is weird because it treats fungus as a platform for manufacturing. It's worth billions because that platform is surprisingly flexible. A substance associated with damp forest floors and decomposition is now being sold as protective packaging and building materials and even food. The contrast is exactly what makes mycelium business so memorable. It looks strange, sounds strange, and it's already large enough that nobody can dismiss it as a novelty anymore. Number 6. Lab automation. One of the least visible weird industries in the world is built around replacing human hands in laboratories with robots, automated liquid handlers, machine vision, scheduling software, and self-running systems that can keep experiments moving with minimal manual work. The estimated global lab automation market is at $8.2 billion in 2024, and it was expected to reach $9 billion by 2025. That's an enormous business for something most people rarely think about at all. The public is usually imagining science as a person in a lab coat pipetting samples or peering into a microscope, but a huge growing industry is instead turning laboratories into semi-automated production environments. The market is driven by rising demand for advanced screening, lab efficiency, and automated solutions across biotech, pharmaceuticals, and even clinical settings. That means the industry is not just selling robotic arms, it's selling time, consistency, and reduction of errors. In other words, it's taking the hidden mechanics of research and diagnostics and trying to industrialize them. Ginkgo Bioworks describes an autonomous lab as a place where scientists can order experimental work from robots just by asking for it. Nature wrote in 2026 that in so-called self-driving labs, AI can develop hypotheses and control robots and lab equipment to carry out experiments on its own. And Reuters also reported in 2025 that Leela Sciences was building what it called AI science factories, combining specialized AI models with automated lab systems to run continuous experiments. This whole industry starts to make science look less like a room full of benches and more like a high-speed search engine that's attached to robots. Automated labs can look unreal. Rows of robots, pipetting heads moving in exact patterns, conveyor-linked sample handling, and barcode-scanned plates. The weirdness is not just the hardware, it is in the change of role. The scientists increasingly design the problems and interpret the results, while the machines do more of the repetitive physical work in between. It doesn't eliminate people from science, but it does change the texture of the work. It is worth billions because modern drug discoveries, diagnostics, biotech, and large-scale testing all reward speed and reproducibility. The field is also still widening. Some systems are just automated helpers, others are edging towards self-driving science. Behind the scenes of medicine and biotech, one of the strangest big industries in the world is teaching laboratories how to run like machines. Number 5. Commercial seaweed. Seaweed. It's one of the most underestimated large industries on Earth. To many people, it still looks like beach debris or sushi wrapping, but the UN Trade and Development says global seaweed market more than tripled over the last 2 decades, from $5 billion in the year 2000 to $17 billion in 2021, and its 2024 seaweed report says the market estimated today is at $19 billion. That makes seaweed one of the greatest examples of a business that sounds too odd and too simple to be so large, yet it already is. Most seaweed is currently used for food, fresh feed for aquaculture or hydrocolloids, but its 2024 report also points to applications in textiles, biopackaging, and plastics alternatives. It's that range is what turns seaweed from a food ingredient into a platform industry. It's a crop that grows in the ocean and can end up in noodles, cosmetics, cattle feed, and packaging concepts. Few raw materials jump so easily between dinner plates and climate tech slide decks. Instead of smokestacks or giant machines, the business here often appears as ropes, floats, shallow water lines, drying racks, coastal harvests, and huge volumes of marine biomass being processed. A report in 2024 said that algae production reached 37 million tons in 2022, and later said the seaweed sector had reached more than 40 million tons and now represented half of marine aquaculture production by volume. The AP reported in 2024 that companies in Hawaii were farming red algae for cattle feed aimed at cutting methane emissions, and said the World Bank estimates that the seaweed sector could be worth nearly $12 billion by 2030 from that climate-related opportunity alone. That's why commercial seaweed is interesting. It's weird because the raw material still feels too humble and too familiar to be part of such a big market, but it is worth billions because the ocean keeps producing a crop that can feed people, serve industry, and plug into climate-related applications. An industry built around giant underwater plants may sound almost primitive. In reality, it's one of the most versatile large businesses in the world, and one of the easiest to underestimate until the numbers come into view. Number 4. Cloud seeding services. Few industries do sound more unusual than paying an aircraft to influence rainfall, yet cloud seeding has become a serious commercial and government-backed business across multiple continents. The core idea is pretty simple. Aircrafts, rockets, or ground systems release substances like silver iodide into clouds to encourage ice crystal formation and potentially increase precipitation. Now, it is important to say that cloud seeding doesn't create rain from empty skies. Meteorological agencies consistently explain that suitable clouds must already exist, and results will vary depending on the atmospheric conditions. But even with those limits, the business has become large enough to support specialized operators. The global weather modification market, which does include cloud seeding, has been valued in the billions by several market research firms, with estimates generally placing it above $3 billion in recent years. Because definitions do differ between the reports, the exact totals vary, but the commercial activity itself is easy to verify. Governments in the United States, China, and the UAE, and parts of Australia continue funding operational programs, and private contractors are carrying out many of those missions using specialized aircraft and monitoring systems. In the United States, Weather Modification International has operated cloud seeding programs for water districts, agricultural regions, and hydroelectric projects, and the company uses aircraft equipped with flare systems that will disperse the silver iodide into the clouds. These flights will often take place over mountain ranges where the snowfall matters directly to the reservoirs and water supply systems. In western North America, snowpack is effectively just stored water, so even a modest increase in snow accumulation can have a major downstream value. The UAE has become one of the most visible users of cloud seeding because of extreme water stress. Reuters has repeatedly reported on UAE cloud seeding missions carried out with specialized aircraft. Pilots target convective clouds in desert conditions where extra rainfall could improve the water resource. China, too, also runs one of the world's largest weather mod systems, using both aircraft and ground launch systems across huge agricultural regions. Now, the science remains debated in terms of exact effectiveness. The U.S. Government Accountability Office and multiple meteorological reviews have noted that measuring results is challenging because weather systems are naturally variable. Some programs report gains under suitable conditions, while scientists continue debating how large those gains really are. Aircraft are flying directly into storm systems. They're deploying seeding flares and attempting to influence the natural process that most people assume is untouchable. Few businesses look more cinematic than a turboprop aircraft climbing towards storm clouds with the goal of changing what happens next. Even with scientific caution, it remains one of the strangest industries currently operating at a serious scale. Number 3. Commercial cryonics. One strange industry worth billions is built around a promise that remains scientifically unproven but commercially very real: preserving human bodies or brains at extremely low temperatures after legal death in the hope that future science might someday make revival possible. What makes cryonics interesting is that the core service exists now. The payments happen now, and the storage facilities exist now, even though there's no demonstrated medical method to reverse any process. It's that uncertainty which is central to understanding the industry honestly. Cryonics is not accepted medicine, and no human has ever been revived after cryonic preservation. But the business built around that possibility is very real, and the current market estimates place the broader cryonics tech sector in the billions. Research Future estimated that the cryonics market is about $4.7 billion in 2025, and other analysts place it in a similar range depending on whether they include only preservation services or the related storage technology. The business itself is unreal because it begins at the exact moment conventional medicine stops. According to the US-based organization Alcor Life Extension Foundation, cryonics procedures begin only after legal death is declared. The body is cooled, circulation support is used temporarily, and cryoprotective chemicals are introduced to reduce ice formation before long-term storage in liquid nitrogen at extremely low temperatures. Alcor states that their cryonics is based on the idea that future technology may eventually repair the original cause of death and reverse the preservation damage, but that no such technology exists today. What customers are buying is not then revival, they're buying long-term preservation under a speculative possibility. The pricing shows how commercialized this field has become. Alcor says whole body preservation starts at around $220,000, while neurocriopreservation, preserving only the brain, starts at around $80,000. In practice, this means cryonics companies operate something between a medical response organization, a lab, and a vault business. Clients often fund the service through life insurance policies, which makes the industry even stranger because a future-oriented preservation service is often financed through ordinary death planning tools. Well, you can see the stainless steel drawers, the liquid nitrogen vapor, the carefully monitored storage chambers, medical equipment, and warehouse-like rooms full of cryogenic containers create a setting that looks closer to science fiction than a conventional business. The appeal, though, is easy to understand, even when the science is unsolved. Cryonics sells time beyond death, even if only in suspended form. That makes it one of the few industries where customers are knowingly paying for a service whose ultimate purpose may never be fulfilled. Number 2. Gene synthesis. A very strange industry worth billions now exists around something that used to belong only to nature. Companies can write DNA to order. That business is called gene synthesis, and it's exactly what it sounds like: manufacturing custom DNA sequences in a lab and delivering them as a product. Academic reviews describe gene synthesis as the direct synthesis of gene-length pieces of DNA from smaller synthetic nucleotides. Twist Bioscience, one of the best-known companies in the field, says its platform manufactures synthetic DNA on a silicon chip and can produce thousands of genes at a time. That means this industry is not just studying genetic codes or reading it, it's selling newly written genetic sequences as a commercial service. Now, the market estimates vary, but they all put the category in the billion-dollar range. Mordor Intelligence estimates that the gene synthesis market is at $2.4 billion right now in 2025, while Precedence Research put it at $4 billion. This is one of the oddest business models on the list because the product is not a gadget, a garment, or a normal chemical ingredient. It's an artificial biological instruction set. Twist offers high-quality gene fragments and clonal genes with price quoted per base pair, and a researcher company is no longer limited to extracting DNA from an organism that already exists. They can specify a sequence and buy it from a supplier. And once that becomes normal, biology starts looking a little more like software manufacturing. A 2025 industry article in Drug Development and Delivery said custom DNA constructs are increasingly critical in the development of genetic medicines, sometimes as a precursor to the active pharmaceutical ingredient. Reuters also reported in February of 2026 that U.S. senators introduced a bill to create new rules around the sale of synthetic gene sequences that could be used to create bioweapons. That proposed legislation is one of the clearest signs of how real the industry is. Governments don't usually start building biosecurity rules around something unless it's already commercially meaningful. This business itself, though, can look almost anticlimactic at first. Chip-based chemistry, automated liquid handling, sequence files, barcoded tubes, and DNA fragments. The idea behind it is extraordinary, though. A company can sit at a computer, design a sequence that doesn't physically exist yet, send it to a supplier, and receive synthetic DNA made to spec. That's why this one's weird, because it turns one of life's core building blocks into a purchasable industrial product. It's worth billions because modern biotech, genomics research, crop science, and genetic medicine is increasingly depending on this ability. The central fact is not uncertain. There's now a real industry built around writing DNA on demand, and once that sinks in, it's going to become one of the hardest businesses on Earth to forget. Number 1. Precise fermentation. This is an industry that sounds almost impossible the first time you hear it. Precision fermentation is the business of using microbes to make specific proteins and ingredients that would normally come from animals or other traditional sources. Reuters describes it as a refined form of brewing in which microbes are multiplied to create animal proteins or specific enzymes. Now, this is not normal brewing, and it's not like ordinary plant-based food. It's a manufacturing system that programs microbes to make ingredients like whey, casein, proteins, collagen, enzymes, and other substances people usually associate with cows, chickens, or much larger biological systems. Grandview Research estimated this precision fermentation market at $4.6 billion in 2025, while Fortune puts it at about $4.3 billion, and that makes it one of the clearest weird industries already worth billions right now. A consumer may see milk protein in a powder, creaminess in a ready-to-drink shake, or an egg white functionality in a food product, but the ingredient didn't come from a cow or a chicken, it came from a fermentation tank. Reuters reported in 2025 that a Dutch startup, Vivici, had raised €32 million to scale alternative dairy proteins. Their own site said the US FDA issued a GRAS, a no-questions letter, for its beta-lactoglobulin whey protein, opening the way for US commercialization. Verily announced a similar FDA no-questions milestone in October of 25 for 2 functionalized dairy proteins made through precision fermentation. These are real regulatory and financing steps tied to ingredients that companies intend to sell. Now, the reason this industry feels even stranger than most food alternative stories is that it's not simply replacing meat or dairy with plants. It's often trying to recreate the exact proteins that give animal-derived foods their texture and function. A Guardian report on the field described companies using precision fermentation to produce casein and a whey for cheese and dairy-style products, while Reuters and other industry sources have described the process as a way to create animal-identical ingredients without the animal itself. It's attempting to rebuild the molecular foundation of familiar foods in bioreactors. That's why this one takes the top spot. It's weird because it's quietly rewriting one of the oldest assumptions in the food and ingredient economy, that certain proteins belong to certain animals. It's worth billions because companies have found a way to make those proteins through microbes instead. Milk proteins without cows, egg functionality without hens, and dairy ingredients made in tanks that look closer to pharmaceutical equipment than farmland. A lot of strange industries sound big only when someone stretches the definition. This one does not need stretching. It already is a multi-billion-dollar business built around brewing biology into ingredients people thought had to come from animals.